Malachi 4 verse 5. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai. All praise is due to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and elders, to the Akim, sincerely pushing the word, sincerity and truth on the four corners of the earth, to the guides, the teachers that came before us, Elijah the prophet, who came in the person of Abba Bivens. Shalom. This is a video going into our great forefather, our teacher, Abba Bivens, whom the Israelite camps of the United States of America, specifically those who originate and descend out of or are of the lineage of 1 West, 125th Street, where Ariyah, the elder, taught the leaders of the current Israelite camps known in the United States of America. Ariyah was the teacher, and Abba Bivens was the teacher of our teachers, who taught Yaikwab, the father of Ariyah, who taught Ma'ashah, and who taught Ariyah. We know him in the Spirit, through the Holy Spirit, guiding us to the understanding that Malachi, the 4th chapter, verse 5, would be fulfilled in the last days, where a man would come to fulfill this prophecy of teaching our people in North America, in the modern day Egypt, this Babylon the Great. Elijah the prophet came and taught the elders, who then set up camps to wake up our people in the streets of America, the so-called black Americans being the tribe of Judah. Elijah the prophet taught in the streets of New York City, in Harlem, to wake up the Lord's people, and also established the beginnings of the Israelite camps that would wake up and spread across the earth the truth of Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Malachi 4th chapter verse 5 prophesies of this man coming, Abba Bivens, who was Elijah the prophet, in the person of Abba Bivens. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord, before the destruction, before the chariots of God, and before the second appearance of Yahweh Shai, whom the world calls Jesus Christ, or so-called black man. Before his second coming, Elijah the prophet would be sent to wake up our people, the so-called black Americans, the so-called Jamaicans, and the so-called Native Americans of indigenous descent, known today as Hispanics or so-called Latinos. The beginnings of our waking up goes back to the early 1900s with Elijah the prophet, Abba Bivens, and also in the late 60s, primarily, our people being woken up as the 12 tribes of Israel, being identified specifically as black Americans, so-called Jamaicans, and so-called West Indians, so-called Haitians, so-called Dominicans, so-called Central Americans of black descent and Indian descent, so-called Puerto Ricans of black descent and so-called indigenous descent, so-called Cubans of black or indigenous descent, the Native Americans of indigenous descent, the Seminole Indians of indigenous descent, the so-called Mexicans of Aztec indigenous descent, the South Americans of black or indigenous descent. The 12 tribes of Israel would be woken up with the second coming of Elijah the prophet prophesied in Malachi 4 verse 5. The Israelite camps, the men in the camps that is seen in YouTube who descend of the One West school understand this man to have been known and named Abba Bivens. Abba Bivens. When one goes into the name Abba Bivens, I actually looked this up more than 10 years ago. I believe it was in the year 2003, 2004. I actually looked up the name Evans or Bivens to see why, if there's any interesting information about the name Bivens. When I looked up the word Bivens, actually I'm gonna go to the website which gives the Bivens family history information. Okay, we're briefly gonna go into this website. It says about the Bivens surname. Bevin, Bivin, Bivens, etc. are all derived from the early Ab Iyuin, i.e. son of Ayuin. Ayuin is pronounced something like Yiayin and was itself derived from Johannes. When you look up the word Johannes, actually when you go to the word John, in the etymology, masculine proper name, Middle English, John, Jan, from Old French, Jan, Jean, Jahan, modern French, Jean, from medieval Latin, Johannes. We know, according to the prophecies, that Abba Bivens is Elijah the prophet, but Elijah the prophet himself came back also as John the Baptist, according to the teachings and the understanding given to us by Yahushua, so-called Jesus Christ. In the book of Matthew, chapter 17, verse 11, I'm going to start in verse 10. It reads, and his disciples asked him, saying, why then say the scribes that Elias must first come? Elias is another way of saying Elijah. So the disciples were referencing the book of Malachi, where it says Elijah the prophet must come first. And Yahushua, this is Matthew 7 verse 11, and Yahushua answered and said unto them, Elias truly shall first come. So this again goes into the prophecy of Malachi chapter 4 verse 5, where Elijah the prophet will be sent before the dreadful day of the Lord, which is the Armageddon, the World War III that will happen in the world. That is the day of the Lord, when the Lord makes his second coming, when the Armageddon is happening in the world, the dreadful day of the Lord. The great and dreadful day of the Lord would be preceded, Elijah the prophet would come before that day. So Elijah the prophet, according to prophecies and according to what we see happen in United States of America, with the tribes of Israel being woken up, starting with the school established by Abba Bivens, the camps, the Israelite camps that were established and continue to spread the truth of the Lord's people, of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob's descendants, the Israelites. That this prophecy is very clear that it has taken place, and we understand him to the spirit to be a man who's named Abba Bivens. And it's very interesting that the name itself, Bivens, goes back to the name John. Elijah the prophet was confirmed to be John the Baptist. They are one in the same spirit. Matthew 17 verse 10 in the middle. Why then say the scribes that Elias must first come? And Yahushua answered and said unto them, Elias truly shall first come and restore all things. So Elijah the prophet, according to Malachi 4 verse 5, came in these last days to wake our people up that we are the Israelites. This happened amongst the so-called black Americans. Many have understood and received the Spirit to understand the understanding that they are the tribe of Judah. And the other tribes have woken up through the tribe of Judah, through men from the tribe of Judah, Elijah the prophet, known as Abba Bivens, Ariah, Mashah, Yaiquab, and the men that they taught in the camps, the Israelite camps descending from One West, the school located in Harlem, New York City, begun to woke up the Israelites, starting with the tribe of Judah. And things were restored as in the ancient world. The knowledge that we had, that we are the Lord's people, started with Elijah the prophet coming back as Abba Bivens. So Elias truly shall first come and restore all things. This has taken place. Elijah the prophet came back and restored all things, began to teach the men that woke up other men, and that spread where we see in YouTube, and many schools have sprung up with the 12 tribes chart, the sign that's employed, the information, the knowledge, wisdom, understanding given to us by the Holy Spirit to wake up our people according to the Bible. The heart of the children was turned back to the fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The children are the so-called Black Americans, West Indians, Jamaicans, the Haitians, the Hispanics, and the Native Americans of Black descent and Native American descent. We've woken up since the late 60s as the nation of Israel in exile in modern-day Egypt and Babylon the Great. So Elias truly shall first come and restore all things. Verse 12, but I say unto you that Elias is come already, and they knew him not, but have done unto him whatsoever they listed. Likewise shall also the Son of Man suffer of them. Verse 13, then the disciples understood that he spake unto them of John the Baptist. So Elijah the prophet came back as John the Baptist. Elijah the prophet would come before the Lord's second appearance on earth, before the day of the Lord, and he was known as a man named Abba Bivens. When we look up the word Bivens, it gives us the name John. Bivens. About the Bivens surname, Bivens, etc., are all derived from the early Ab Iyuan, i.e. son of Iyuan. Iyuan is pronounced something like Y-Ian and was itself derived from Johannes, Shalakia, Johannes. John in the etymology, masculine proper name, Middle English, John, Jan, Middle 12th century, from Old French, Jan, Jean, Jehan, Modern French, Jean, from Medieval Latin, Johannes. So the name itself, Bivens, means John, which we know John the Baptist and Elijah the prophet are the same person. So this is all linking up in the spirit that Abba Bivens was indeed Elijah the prophet, who was also John the Baptist. Abba Bivens is in a spiritual, very spiritual name, as it is being manifest, that it actually goes back to the spiritual understanding that the man Abba Bivens was Elijah the prophet, who was also John the Baptist. Bivens was the name of Elijah the prophet in these last days, Abba Bivens. The Welsh name Bivens is a patronymic surname created from the Welsh personal name Evan. The surname Bivens was originally Ab Evan or Ap Evan. The distinctive Welsh patronymic prefix Ab or Ap means son of, but the prefix has been assimilated into the surname over the course of time. So the name itself is very spiritual. Abba Bivens, and the name itself in the original pronunciation was Ab Evan. Abba Bivens, Evan. The name Evan is a Welsh baby name. In Welsh, the meaning of the name Evan is young. The Welsh form of the Hebrew, John. So Bivens is the name John, meaning the Most High has been gracious, or the Most High has shown favor. So this is very spiritual that the name Abba Bivens itself goes back to the name John. So Abba Bivens would be Father John. We know John the Baptist, according to Yahweh Shai and the understanding he gave to his disciples, John the Baptist was Elijah the prophet, and Elijah the prophet would come back in the last days. We understand him to have come back under the name Abba Bivens, which means John. John the Baptist, the spirit of that man was the greatest prophet, Elijah the prophet. And he came back in these last days. He has woken up our people, specifically the elders and the prophet and the apostles who came and continue to teach out in the streets of Babylon the Great, the modern day Egypt, waking up the so-called Black Americans, which is the tribe of Judah, and the other tribes, which is listed on the 12 tribes chart, waking up our people according to the prophecies of the book of Ezekiel, the 37th chapter, where the wooden plank, the names of the tribes of Israel would be written on a plank, on a wooden plank. This is what transpired. This is what happened. This is what came to pass with the student of Abba Bivens, Elder Ariyah. And from then on is history, where the Israelite camps have begun from the late 60s, 1969, early 70s until 2017, have been waking up the so-called Black Americans and the so-called Latinos and the so-called Native Americans. So this all links up by the grace and mercy of Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. These prophecies have come to pass. Elijah the prophet came back. He came in the person of Abba Bivens. And the name Bivens itself goes back to John. And John is Elijah the prophet. So with that, I'm going to say all praises due to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and elders, to the men, the teachers that have woken us up to the truth. Elijah the prophet, the elders, Ariyah, Mashah, Yaiquab, to the apostle Tahar, all the apostles of Great Millstone, and all the sincere Akim of Great Millstone and all camps who are putting the work out in the streets, in the hedges, in the marketplaces of Babylon the Great, waking up the people, the 12 tribes of Israel, for the elect of the nation of Israel to wake up and return back to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, because prophecies are powerful and they're coming to pass every day. And they came to pass. Matthew chapter 4 verse 5 came to pass, and verse 6, and it's a beautiful thing that the Lord has woken us up to understand these prophecies and to teach them to the world and to wake our people up once more. So with that, Shalom.